What if the people you save end up saving you? What if the rain-soaked alley you were running from becomes the place where your life truly begins? This isn't just a story about loss, or wealth, or fate. It's about what love does when the world gives up on you. About a woman who lost everything, only to find 3 forgotten souls who would teach her the true meaning of family. Welcome to Abandoned Wife Adopted 3 Homeless Kids, unaware they were heirs to $60 million. A story born in the shadows of heartbreak, but destined to shine brighter than any fortune. In a world obsessed with appearances, where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, one woman dared to care. She was betrayed, broken, and forgotten. Yet in her darkest hour, she chose compassion over bitterness. And that single choice changed the lives of 3 children and the course of her own destiny. From a rain-drenched alley to a courtroom that tested the very definition of love, this story isn't just about survival. It's about transformation, about how the human heart can rebuild what life tears apart, about finding purpose in pain and family in the most unexpected places. If you've ever doubted your worth, if you've ever wondered whether the smallest act of love can truly change the world, this story will answer you. Because sometimes, the people who have nothing left to give end up giving everything that matters. Stay until the end, because what begins as heartbreak will end as hope, and you'll never look at the word family the same way again. The industrial quarter never truly sleeps. It just exhales in slow, mechanical sighs. Steam rises from the manholes like ghosts stretching their fingers toward the night sky. Somewhere in the distance, a train moans, a lonely sound that fades into the rhythm of dripping rain. This part of the city doesn't care who you were yesterday. It only asks one question. How long can you last here tonight? Beneath a flickering street lamp, Lydia Monroe pushes a shopping cart filled with aluminum cans. The wheels squeak with every step, echoing off the wet concrete. Her coat, once beige and elegant, is now frayed at the cuffs, stained by rain and time. 3 weeks ago, she was Mrs. Monroe, wife of Douglas Monroe, co-founder of a tech company everyone in the neighborhood bragged about investing in. She had a house with manicured lawns, linen napkins folded just so, and dinners served on matching plates. But all that ended the afternoon she opened a door she wasn't supposed to. Inside her own home, she found her husband's betrayal, dressed in perfume and 28 years of youth. Kayla, the assistant, the laughter, the silk sheets that used to belong to her. It took 30 seconds for her world to collapse, but it had been crumbling for years. The divorce papers were already printed, the accounts already drained, the house, the car, the savings, all in his name. And Lydia? She was left with debt, an empty ring box, and a wedding dress folded neatly in a suitcase that now doubled as her dresser. The rain hasn't stopped since that day. She used to watch storms from her bay window with a glass of red wine in hand, marveling at their power. Now, she feels that power soaking through her shoes. Every raindrop feels personal, like the sky reminding her how far she's fallen. But in the distance, beneath the bridge where shadows gather like secrets, 3 small figures huddle together. A boy crouches, his thin arms forming a shield over 2 younger children. A makeshift fort built from cardboard and hope. The boy's name is Noah Vale. 12 years old, but his eyes carry the gravity of someone twice that. His sister, Ivy, 9, clutches a plastic bag of damp bread like treasure. The youngest, Finn, 7, fights sleep with quiet determination. They've learned that sleeping too deeply can mean waking up to danger. Noah breaks their dinner into careful portions. Finn gets the bigger piece, he says, ignoring his own empty stomach. Ivy doesn't argue. She's the mathematician among them, keeping track of every crumb, every minute, every hiding place. Since their grandmother died 6 months ago, she's turned survival into an equation. One meal equals one more day together. They eat in silence until the scrape of metal on pavement cuts through the rain, a sound like teeth grinding. Noah stiffens. His instincts scream, "Run," but his siblings are too tired to move. Through the gray curtain of rain, a figure emerges, pushing a cart, head down, moving slowly. For a moment, she looks like every other ghost that haunts this forgotten district. Then she looks up. Lydia. Her eyes, once lined with designer mascara, now rimmed with exhaustion, lock on theirs. 3 small shadows against a dumpster. For an instant, she thinks they're a hallucination, her loneliness manifesting shapes from mist and memory. Children don't live here, not in alleys where the rats have seniority. Then she hears it, a small, trembling voice. "Please, just a little bit more." It's Finn. His words are a whisper, but they hit her harder than any storm. She knows that hunger. She knows the ache of counting coins, the humiliation of realizing kindness has an expiration date. She steps closer, abandoning her cart. "Hey," she calls softly, her voice cracking like it's been years since anyone deserved gentleness from it. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." Noah straightens, shielding his siblings like a soldier guarding the last pieces of his heart. "We're not doing anything wrong," he says, the edge of defiance barely covering fear. "We'll move if this is your spot." "This isn't about territory, sweetheart," Lydia says, her voice steadying as she kneels down, ruining what's left of her good slacks. "When's the last time you 3 had a real meal?" "We manage fine," Noah replies quickly. But up close, Lydia can see the truth. The hollow cheeks, the blue lips, the way Ivy's hands tremble from more than just cold. "I've got $23, Lydia says after a pause. "That'll buy burgers and maybe a motel room for the night. Interested?" Noah hesitates, suspicion warring with exhaustion. "Why?" he asks quietly. "What do you want from us?" Lydia thinks of Douglas, of her empty apartment, of the silence that fills it like smoke. She meets the boy's eyes and says, "Because 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in my car in the rain, waiting for someone to save me. And no one came. Maybe broken people are supposed to find each other." The rain falls heavier, drumming on the metal roof above. Ivy looks at her brother. Finn shifts closer to Lydia, curiosity winning over fear. "Are you broken too?" Finn asks. Lydia smiles, but it's the kind of smile that aches. "Pretty thoroughly," she says, "but I think broken things can be fixed if you're careful with the pieces." For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then Finn steps forward. His small, dirt-smudged hand slips into hers. That's how it begins. 3 lost children, 1 forgotten woman, and a night soaked in rain that will change everything. Rain falls harder now, turning the alley into a river of silver and shadow. Lydia steadies herself as the boy's small hand tightens around hers. The contact feels electric, not because of warmth, but because of what it means. Trust, given reluctantly, is sacred in places like this. Noah's eyes narrow, his posture protective. Let him go, he warns, voice steady but low. Lydia doesn't flinch. I'm not taking him anywhere, she says softly. Just somewhere dry. Somewhere you can breathe for a minute. Ivy looks up, rain dripping from her lashes. Her voice is barely a whisper. You have a car? Lydia shakes her head. Not anymore. The three siblings exchange glances, the silent language of children who have learned to survive without words. Noah finally nods, a tiny, reluctant surrender. Okay, he mutters, but we sit near the door. Deal, Lydia says. They move through the streets like a mismatched parade. Lydia with her cart, the children close behind, shadows trailing through the mist. The nearest fast food place glows like a beacon, its fluorescent lights cutting through the night. Lydia pushes open the door, and warmth rushes over them, carrying the scent of fries and something that almost smells like safety. The cashier glances at their soaked clothes, but says nothing. Lydia counts out her money carefully, ordering 4 cheeseburgers, fries, and water cups. $23.70. She slides the last of her bills across the counter like she's offering a confession. They sit in the corner booth. Finn eats first, his small hands trembling as he unwraps the burger like a gift. Ivy eats slower, watching him, making sure he gets enough. Noah waits until they're both halfway through before taking his first bite. Lydia watches them eat, the hunger in their eyes cutting deeper than any wound she's ever known. When they finish, she leans forward. There's a motel a few blocks from here. It's not much, but it's warm. Noah hesitates. We don't take charity. Lydia smiles faintly. Good, because I'm offering company, not charity. She pauses, then adds, besides, I don't sleep well alone anymore. That earns the faintest flicker of something on Noah's face. Pity, maybe, or understanding. Okay, he says finally, but we'll pay you back. Someday. Fair enough. The Sunset Motel looks like a bruise against the night. Pink neon sputtering, half the sign burned out. Lydia books a single room with 2 beds. The clerk doesn't ask questions. He never does. She leads them down the narrow hallway, carpet worn thin, wallpaper peeling like tired skin. Inside, the room smells faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, but to the children, it's a palace. Finn runs to the bed, bouncing once before collapsing in laughter. Ivy checks the bathroom, inspecting the cracked tiles with the seriousness of an engineer. Noah lingers by the door, scanning exits like a soldier. Lydia tosses them a towel. Shower's yours first. Take turns. I'll find something on TV. The sound of running water fills the air, followed by giggles. When Finn emerges, steam clinging to his curls, his cheeks are pink and clean. The water stayed hot the whole time, he says in awe. Ivy comes next, her hair dark and shiny, her expression softer. Noah takes the longest, and when he finally steps out, Lydia's breath catches. Bruises map his ribs like dark fingerprints of pain. Some fresh, some faded. She says quietly, "Who did that to you?" Noah stiffens. Nobody that matters. Lydia nods slowly. Well, they don't get to matter anymore. He doesn't answer, but something in his posture eases. Maybe it's belief. Maybe it's exhaustion. Later, when the lights are dim, Ivy and Finn fall asleep instantly. 2 small shapes under mismatched blankets. Noah sits by the window, watching the rain beat against the glass. Lydia joins him, sitting quietly until he speaks. You don't know us, he says. You don't know what we've done to stay alive. I don't need to, Lydia replies. I just know you shouldn't have to do it alone. He studies her reflection in the window. Why do you care? She exhales, her breath fogging the glass. Because 3 weeks ago, I had everything. Then I didn't. And in that space between losing it and learning to survive, I realized I don't want to disappear, not if I can help someone else stay seen. For the first time, Noah looks at her without suspicion. His voice softens. Grandma Ruby used to say, broken people still have light inside them. It just shines through the cracks. Lydia smiles. Then we'll shine together, okay? He doesn't answer, but when she reaches over and gently tucks the blanket around his shoulders, he doesn't pull away either. Hours later, the city hums outside, the sound of trucks, rain, and distant sirens. Inside room 12, a woman who's lost everything, and 3 children who never had enough fall asleep under the same flickering lamp. No grand speeches, no guarantees, just quiet breathing and the fragile peace of people who've chosen to keep going. Lydia lies awake the longest, listening, wondering, hoping. She doesn't know it yet, but this night, their first together, is the moment her life begins again. Morning comes late to the Sunset Motel. The neon sign outside blinks like a dying heartbeat, flashing weak pink light across the curtains. Lydia wakes to the soft sound of breathing, the kind that belongs to children who've learned to sleep with one ear open. For a few seconds, she forgets where she is. Then she remembers the rain, the alley, the small hands in hers. The ache in her chest isn't fear this time. It's something gentler, something like purpose. Finn stirs first, his curls a wild halo against the pillow. It's morning, he mumbles. Almost, Lydia whispers. Go back to sleep if you want. He shakes his head. It smells like pancakes. Lydia laughs softly. That's wishful thinking, sweetheart. Just the motel coffee brewing down the hall. He grins and curls back under the blanket. Beside him, Ivy is already awake, reading a paperback she found in the motel's lost and found bin. Her eyes are alert, always calculating, always watching. Noah sits by the window again, his knees drawn to his chest, the same quiet sentry he was the night before. Couldn't sleep, Lydia asks. He shrugs. Didn't want to. She nods, understanding. Some people rest best when they're moving. I'll grab us some breakfast, she says. Stay put. The motel lobby smells like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. Lydia buys 4 cups of instant oatmeal, a carton of milk, and a bag of bruised bananas from the vending counter. It's not much, but it's warm. When she returns, Ivy's sitting cross-legged on the bed, explaining fractions to Finn using torn napkins and crumbs. Lydia watches them for a moment before setting the food down. You're a teacher, huh? She says to Ivy. Ivy blushes. Grandma Ruby taught us to keep learning no matter what. Smart woman, Lydia says softly. They eat together, a quiet rhythm of spoons and soft laughter. Noah finally joins them, taking his portion only after everyone else has eaten. So, he says cautiously, what happens now? Lydia sips her coffee. Now, we figure out the next step. Which is? Ivy asks. Lydia smiles faintly. I'll let you know when I do. By noon, the rain has stopped. The world outside glistens with the fragile beauty that only follows a storm. Lydia walks to the diner next door, a place called Harper's, the kind of roadside spot where the coffee never tastes good, but the waitress calls everyone honey. She leaves the kids in the room with the TV on low and a promise to lock the door. Inside, she orders a grilled cheese and listens to the clatter of dishes. The waitress, Betty, recognizes the look in Lydia's eyes. "Rough patch?" she asks. Lydia nods. "Something like that." Betty studies her for a beat, then slides a paper toward her. "We're hiring. The pay's lousy, but it's honest." Lydia stares at the "Help Wanted" sign like it's written in another language. She hasn't worked since her 20s, but something inside her, something rusted but unbroken, stirs to life. "When can I start?" she asks. Betty smiles. "Tomorrow morning, if you've got hands that can pour coffee and a heart that can fake cheer." "I can do both." When Lydia returns to the motel, the room smells faintly of soap and hope. Ivy has folded all the towels neatly. Finn has drawn a picture on the motel notepad, 4 stick figures under a rainbow labeled "Us." Noah sits on the bed, flipping through the local newspaper. "Find anything interesting?" Lydia asks. He points to the classifieds. "Jobs, apartments, not that we can afford either." "Not yet," Lydia says, smiling. "But we're getting there." He looks at her skeptically. "You really think you can fix all this?" She sits beside him. "No, but I can start with breakfast and clean clothes. That's how fixing begins." For a moment, Noah looks like he wants to argue, but then he exhales. "Grandma Ruby used to say the same thing," he murmurs. "Start small, just start." "Smart lady," Lydia echoes. That evening, she counts the money left in her wallet. $9.52, enough for one more night. She pays the front desk and carries back the key, hands trembling slightly. When she returns, the kids are watching an old cartoon on the flickering TV. Finn's laughter fills the room, pure and bright. Ivy leans against the headboard, pretending not to smile. Noah glances over, his face softening for the first time. "Thanks," he says quietly. "For what?" "For not asking us questions we don't want to answer." Lydia nods. "When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. Until then, I'll just make sure there's food." He studies her for a long moment. "You're weird," he finally says. She laughs, a sound she hasn't heard from herself in weeks. "Yeah, that's probably true." As night falls again, Lydia sits by the window, watching the motel's neon sign flicker outside. In the bed behind her, the children breathe evenly, their bodies finally relaxed. She thinks about the strange twist of fate that brought them together. 3 lost souls, and a woman trying to remember who she is. For the first time in a long time, Lydia feels something like peace. Not happiness yet, but the first fragile step toward it. She looks at the children and whispers to herself, "Maybe this is where I was supposed to end up all along." Outside, the neon sign hums. Inside, 4 hearts beat in unsteady harmony. And though none of them know it yet, this dimly lit motel room has just become the starting line for something extraordinary. 3 months later, the Sunset Motel is a memory, half blurred by rain, half burned into the soul. The new place isn't much, but it's theirs. A 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that smells like old paint and burnt toast. The walls are thin, the pipes moan at night, and the heater has 2 moods, too hot or not at all. Still, to Lydia and the kids, it's home. The mornings start early now. Lydia's alarm buzzes at 4:30 a.m., and by 5:15, she's walking to Harper's Diner, the same one that gave her a chance when she had nothing. She wears a uniform 2 sizes too big and a name tag that reads Lydia M. The fluorescent lights hum, coffee brews in endless loops, and the customers, truckers, night shift workers, the sleepless, become familiar faces. She's not Mrs. Monroe anymore, She's Lydia, the waitress with the tired smile and a heart that won't quit. She works the early shift while the kids sleep. Noah walks Ivy and Finn to school each morning, his protective instincts sharpened by months of survival. He's grown taller, 13 now, all elbows and quiet strength. His teachers call him disciplined, but Lydia knows better. He's a boy who's lived too much too soon. Ivy, 10, handles the apartment budget like a CFO. Every receipt, every coin, logged in neat handwriting on scrap paper. "We can't spend more than $5 on snacks this week," she announces one Saturday, pencil tapping against the counter. Lydia hides a smile. "Who put you in charge?" Ivy grins. "You did. You just don't remember it." And Finn, sweet, curious Finn, is blooming. He comes home with paint on his fingers and stories spilling from his mouth. His teacher says he started a kindness journal, drawing pictures of the people he loves. Lydia finds one taped to the fridge. 4 stick figures under a sun, labeled "My Family." Their lives have a rhythm now. Every day is a small equation they solve together. Mornings, coffee, cereal, hugs. Afternoons, homework at the diner counter, fries shared between math problems. Evenings, dishes, laughter, stories, and lights out by 10. It's not perfect. Some nights the bills don't balance. Some weeks, the groceries stretch thin. But it's real. A kind of ordinary magic that Lydia never thought she'd feel again. Noah takes on odd jobs after school. Mowing lawns, delivering newspapers, fixing leaky faucets for neighbors. He never complains, even when exhaustion shadows his face. "We're fine," he says every time Lydia worries. "We've been through worse." But one night, she finds him awake on the couch, hands trembling from exhaustion. "You don't have to carry it all, honey," she says, sitting beside him. He looks at her, eyes tired but steady. "Someone has to." Lydia takes his hand. "We do it together, remember? That's the rule." For a moment, his tough exterior cracks and he leans into her shoulder. "I just don't ever want to go back there," he whispers. "You won't," she promises. "Not as long as I'm breathing." At Harper's, Lydia becomes known for her calm in chaos. She remembers every regular's order, listens to their stories, and carries a warmth that seeps into the diner's walls. "You've got the touch," Betty tells her one afternoon. "People come here for the food, but they stay for you." Lydia smiles. "I'm just doing what I can." But when she counts her tips at night, she feels a quiet pride. For the first time since Douglas left, she's surviving on her own terms. The kids start visiting the diner on weekends. Noah helps bus tables. Ivy brings her math homework and calculates tips. Finn draws pictures for the wall, a gallery of crayon rainbows and smiling faces. The customers adore them. One old trucker leaves a $5 bill under Finn's drawing with a note. "Keep shining, little man." Still, not everything is easy. Ivy's obsession with control grows stronger. She counts everything: steps, spoons, days since the last move. Loud noises still make Finn flinch. Noah still wakes from nightmares, whispering apologies to ghosts of the past. Lydia learns to navigate their wounds gently. She keeps the fridge stocked, the lights warm, and her hugs long enough to anchor them. On weekends, they visit the library. It becomes their safe haven, a place where silence feels kind, not lonely. Ivy devours math books. Finn disappears into picture stories. Noah, surprisingly, reads about history and leadership. "People used to think one person couldn't change anything," he tells Lydia. "They were wrong." She looks at him with quiet awe. you already are changing something. Months turn into a year. Their apartment becomes filled with signs of normal life. School photos taped to walls, a calendar with circled birthdays, grocery lists scribbled on napkins. Lydia still worries about money, but now her fears are about tomorrow, not survival. One night, as they eat spaghetti made from a dollar store box, Finn looks up and says, "We're like a puzzle, aren't we? All our broken pieces fit together." Lydia smiles, tears catching her voice. "Yeah, sweetheart, the best kind of puzzle." Noah adds, "The kind that doesn't come with instructions, but somehow turns out right." For the first time, laughter fills the small apartment without feeling borrowed. They may not have much, but they have each other, and that's more than enough. When Lydia tucks them in that night, she pauses at the door, watching the soft rise and fall of their breaths. Her hands tremble, not from exhaustion, but gratitude. Life is still hard, but now it's also beautiful. She whispers to the dark, "We made it through the math of survival." And for once, the equation feels complete. Tuesday mornings at Harper's Diner always feel the same. The hum of the coffee machine, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of half-awake customers. Outside, the city is still rubbing its eyes, and inside, Lydia moves through the rhythm like a song she's finally learned by heart. Her apron smells faintly of syrup and bleach, and her hair is pulled back tight, though a few silver strands have escaped to frame her face. She greets the regulars by name, keeps the refills coming, and smiles even when her feet ache. It's a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from building something real. By 11:30, the breakfast crowd thins out, replaced by construction workers grabbing lunch before their shift. Lydia wipes down booth 7, humming softly to the tune of the radio when the door chime jingles. She looks up, expecting another familiar face, but what she sees freezes her in place. A man in his late 60s, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, stands at the entrance. He carries himself like someone who's never had to wait for anything in his life. His hair, perfectly silver, gleams under the diner lights. In this world of denim and coffee stains, he looks almost cinematic. He takes booth 7. Lydia hesitates before approaching, a coffee pot in hand. "Morning," she says, keeping her tone polite. "What can I get you?" He glances up, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Coffee. Black. And perhaps a few moments of your time, Mrs. Monroe." The name hits her like a ghost. Nobody has called her that in months. Her grip tightens on the coffee pot. "I go by Lydia now," she says quietly. "Do I know you?" He offers a small, almost apologetic smile. "Not personally. My name is Arthur Pembroke. I'm an attorney. I represent the estate of Ruth Vale." The name pulls her attention instantly. Ruth Vale. Ivy had mentioned her once, their grandmother. "She's gone," Lydia says, cautious. "Passed away before I met the kids." "Yes," Arthur replies, placing a worn leather briefcase on the table. And yet, her story, and theirs, are far from over. He slides a folder across the table. Lydia stares at it, heart thudding in her chest. "What is this?" "It concerns the children," he says simply. "Noah, Ivy, and Finn." For a moment, everything inside her goes still. Her mind flashes through a dozen fears: child services, school trouble, unpaid bills. If this is about them being enrolled under my name, it's not, he interrupts gently. It's about their inheritance. Lydia blinks. Inheritance? The word feels foreign in her mouth, like a joke told too soon. Arthur nods slowly, unfolding the papers with meticulous care. Ruth Vale, the children's grandmother, was the daughter of Edwin Vale, a man whose name once graced the stock pages of every major newspaper. He built his empire on railroads, then shipping, then technology. When his daughter eloped with a jazz musician in 1967, he disowned her publicly, but privately, he never stopped loving her. He taps the document. When Edwin Vale died, his will left his fortune, over $60 million, to his daughter's descendants, provided they could be found and raised in an environment of genuine love. Lydia stares at him, struggling to process. That can't be right. The kids had nothing. They lived on the streets. Arthur nods. Their grandmother refused to claim the money. She lived simply, perhaps to teach them values money could never buy. But the trust remains. And according to this document, those 3 children are the rightful heirs. She leans back in disbelief. You're telling me they're rich? That these kids who counted coins for dinner are millionaires? Not just millionaires, Mrs. Lydia. As of this quarter's accounting, the trust has grown to $63 million. The words hang in the air like thunder. Lydia looks around the diner, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound. The hiss of the coffee machine, the scrape of a fork against a plate, the creak of old wood beneath her feet. Why are you telling me this? Because there's a condition, Arthur says, his voice lowering. The inheritance is valid only if the children are being raised by someone who loves them, truly loves them, not for what they have, but for who they are. My firm has been observing your family quietly for several months. Observing, she echoes, bristling. He raises a calming hand, not intrusively, discreetly. I assure you, it was necessary. We've seen you take care of them, work long hours, attend school meetings, nurse them through illness, all without a single clue about this money. You've already proven what the will demanded. Lydia's breath catches. You mean, they passed the condition? Arthur smiles faintly. They've already passed it. And you, Ms. Monroe, have as well. Her hands tremble as she stares down at the papers. Each page feels heavier than the last. Legal documents, account statements, signatures from another world. I don't understand, she whispers. Why me? Why now? Because, Arthur says, closing the folder gently. Ruth Vale believed that love doesn't choose bloodlines, it chooses hearts. And her father, for all his pride, must have agreed. He wanted to ensure that his descendants would find not just wealth, but the kind of guardian who would love them without knowing their worth. The diner noise fades into a dull hum. Lydia looks at the window, where sunlight cuts across the table, dust motes swirling in its glow. They don't know, do they? She asks quietly. No, Arthur replies, and I wanted to speak with you first, because when they do, everything will change. Lydia stares at him, her thoughts spinning. Money. So much money it could change their lives forever. College. Safety. A home that isn't one paycheck away from disaster, but also attention, judgment, people who might try to take the children away. Her voice trembles. What happens next? Arthur's eyes soften. That's up to you. The funds are theirs. The question is, how do you want the world to find out? Lydia closes the folder, her reflection caught in the polished surface. Behind her name tag and tired smile, something new flickers in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also determination. I'll tell them, she says, but not yet. First, I need to think. Arthur nods. Take your time. Just know, Ms. Monroe, the moment you open that door, nothing will ever be the same again. As he stands to leave, Lydia glances at the clock. The lunch crowd is filing in, but her mind is 1,000 miles away. She watches the man disappear through the glass door, briefcase gleaming in the sunlight. Booth 7 is empty again, but for the first time, Lydia feels its weight. Because in the space he left behind, her old world and her new one are about to collide. It started with a headline. By dawn the next morning, the story had already gone viral. Waitress adopts 3 homeless kids, unaware they were heirs to $63 million. Lydia saw it first on the diner's small TV. The volume turned low while she poured the morning coffee. The words flashed across the screen in bold letters, accompanied by an old photo of her and the kids taken outside the school carnival a month ago. She froze, coffee spilling onto the counter. Her heart dropped. Someone had leaked it. The bell over the door jingled, and Betty came rushing in, her face pale. Lydia, honey, you need to see this. She held up her phone, scrolling through a flood of news stories, social media posts, and local gossip boards. Photos of Lydia and the kids filled every screen. Their names, their faces. Lydia's hands trembled. Oh no, the kids. Betty nodded grimly. They're everywhere. By noon, 3 news vans were parked outside Harper's Diner. Reporters swarmed like crows, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward with the same question again and again. How does it feel to go from poverty to millions overnight? Lydia tried to push through the crowd, shielding her face. No comment, she said firmly, over and over. But the questions kept coming. Did you know about the inheritance? Are you the legal guardian? Are you exploiting them for money? When she finally reached her car, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely fit the key in the ignition. The second she pulled into their apartment parking lot, her phone started buzzing. Unknown numbers, talk shows, even people claiming to be long-lost relatives of the Vale family. She didn't answer any of them. Inside the apartment, the kids were huddled on the couch, the TV muted, but still showing their faces. Noah's expression was tight with anger. Ivy clutched her math notebook like a shield. Finn sat close to Lydia the moment she walked in. Are we in trouble? Finn asked quietly. No, sweetheart, Lydia said, kneeling in front of him. You didn't do anything wrong. None of us did. Noah glared at the screen. They called us millionaire orphans, like we're some kind of joke. They don't know you, Lydia said gently. They just see a story. Well, I hate it, Ivy muttered. Now everyone at school will know. They'll treat us different. Lydia reached for her hands. We'll figure this out. Together. But the knock came before she could finish. 3 sharp raps on the door, authority in their rhythm. Lydia's stomach turned cold. When she opened it, a woman stood there, crisp blazer, badge on her lapel. Mrs. Monroe, my name is Janet Crowley, Child Protective Services. Lydia's heart sank. You've got to be kidding me. Crowley's expression was professional but distant. I'm here to discuss the children's welfare. Given recent developments regarding their inheritance, we've received several reports raising concerns about their living conditions. From who? Lydia demanded. Anonymous sources, Crowley said, stepping inside before she was invited. Her gaze swept the small apartment, taking in the cramped living room. The second-hand furniture, the smell of dinner lingering in the air. These children are now among the wealthiest minors in the state. Their circumstances should reflect that. They're the same children they were yesterday, Lydia said firmly. The only thing that changed is people's perception. Crowley's pen scratched against her clipboard. Be that as it may, the department will be conducting a full review. Noah stepped forward, his voice low but steady. We're not going anywhere. Crowley's brow furrowed. Young man, this is illegal. Then you can write down that we want to stay here, Noah interrupted. With her. Lydia put a hand on his shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. She turned to the social worker. We have nothing to hide. Crowley gave a polite nod, but her eyes lingered. I'll be in touch. When the door shut, Lydia leaned against it, breathing hard. The kids stood frozen, waiting for her to say something reassuring. But all she could think was, they're trying to take them from me. By evening, things got worse. A sleek black car pulled up outside the building. A man stepped out, his posture confident, his smile practiced. Lydia didn't need to guess who it was. Douglas, she muttered under her breath. Her ex-husband approached, with his arm draped around Kayla, the same woman who had replaced her. He still looked perfect, polished, heartless. Hello, sweetheart, he said, as if he still had the right. I heard about your situation. Thought I'd stop by and offer some help. Lydia crossed her arms. I don't need your help. Douglas chuckled. You're raising 3 kids worth $63 million. You need help, Lydia. Managing wealth takes expertise, connections, guidance, things you never quite excelled at. Noah appeared in the doorway, his jaw tight. She's doing fine without you. Douglas smirked. And who might you be? I'm her son. That stopped him. Her... what? Her son, Noah repeated, his voice firm. We all are. Douglas laughed once, low and cruel. You're not even related. Family isn't about blood, Noah shot back. It's about who stays. Kayla tugged at Douglas's sleeve. Let's go. This isn't worth it. He hesitated, glaring at Lydia. You're in over your head. When reality hits, you'll come crawling back. She met his gaze calmly. I'd rather crawl through fire than ever need you again. He left, slamming the car door behind him. The silence afterward felt heavy, electric. That night, Lydia sat at the table with the kids, takeout boxes scattered between them. Finn poked at his noodles. Are we going to have to prove we love each other now? Lydia looked at each of them. Noah's steady eyes, Ivy's quiet fear, Finn's innocent hope, and smiled softly. Maybe. But we don't need to prove it to them. Just to ourselves. Ivy nodded. Good. Because math says love doesn't disappear when people start watching. It multiplies. Lydia laughed, tears catching in her throat. You might just be right, genius. As they cleaned up dinner, she looked out the window at the swarm of cameras still parked below. Their world had changed overnight. The peace they'd built was gone. But beneath the noise and flashing lights, their bond held steady. And in that chaos, Lydia made herself a silent promise. They could take her name, her privacy, even her peace, but they would never take her family. The courthouse smelled like rain and old paper, a mix of tension and history. Cameras flashed outside as Lydia stepped through the double doors, the children close behind her. Noah wore the only suit they could find at a thrift store, too big at the shoulders. Ivy clutched her math notebook like it was armor. Finn, dressed in a small blazer that made him look both brave and heartbreakingly young, held Lydia's hand tight. She could feel their fear through her palm, a pulse that echoed her own. Every hallway, every whisper, every camera lens seemed to question her right to be there. A waitress, a divorcee, a woman who stumbled into motherhood by accident. They saw her as temporary, disposable. But Lydia knew better. Family wasn't a title. It was a choice. The courtroom buzzed with quiet chaos. Reporters filled the back row. Lawyers shuffled papers, their whispers sharp as knives. Across the aisle sat Martin Vale, Ruth's estranged cousin, a man whose expression carried generations of entitlement. Beside him, his attorney smirked as if the verdict had already been written. A few seats over, Patricia Wellington, another relative, adjusted her designer jacket, projecting the kind of practiced composure money could buy. Lydia sat beside her court-appointed lawyer, Sarah Garcia, a young public defender with kind eyes and far too many cases. Sarah squeezed Lydia's hand. "Just stay calm," she whispered. "Tell the truth. That's all we need." All we need. Lydia tried to believe that. Judge Eleanor Rhodes entered the room. Silver hair, sharp gaze, no patience for theatrics. "Court is now in session," she said. "This hearing will determine permanent guardianship of Noah, Ivy, and Finn Vale." The air thickened. Lydia glanced at the children. Noah sat tall, his jaw set. Ivy traced invisible equations on her notebook. Finn swung his feet under the bench, humming softly to calm himself. Martin's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, my client represents the bloodline of the Vale family. He possesses the financial expertise, social connections, and educational resources necessary to ensure the children's future success. While we commend Ms. Monroe's charitable actions during their time of need, we must recognize that love alone cannot prepare 3 heirs for the responsibilities of immense wealth." He paused for effect, then added, "These children require structure, not sentiment." Lydia's hands clenched. Her lawyer rose next, voice steady but small in the grand room. "Your Honor, Ms. Monroe didn't choose these children for their last name. She chose them because they were hungry, scared, and alone. She's given them stability, education, and most importantly, love. What she lacks in money, she makes up for in heart." Martin's lawyer scoffed audibly. "Heart doesn't pay for tutors or college tuition." Judge Rhodes raised a hand. "Enough. Let's hear from the witnesses." The first witnesses were experts, child psychologists, financial advisors, social workers. Their testimonies were clinical, filled with phrases like appropriate socioeconomic environment and long-term asset management. Lydia felt invisible among their jargon. Then, it was her turn. When she took the stand, Sarah whispered, "Just be yourself." Lydia looked at the judge, then at the sea of faces watching her. "I didn't plan any of this," she began. "I didn't go looking for children to save. I found 3 kids hiding from the rain, and they found me. We were all broken in different ways, but somehow, we started to fit together." She took a breath. "I may not have a mansion or a degree, but I have something those things can't give you. A promise. Every night, I make sure they fall asleep knowing they matter. Every morning, I wake up and try to make the world a little safer for them. That's what family is. Showing up. Every single day." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Money doesn't raise children. Love does. When the children were called to testify, the courtroom fell silent. Finn went first. He climbed onto the witness chair, legs too short to reach the floor. He held his stuffed rabbit in one hand. "Mama Lydia read us stories when we were cold," he said softly. "She gave us her coat when we didn't have one. She doesn't need our money. She already picked us." Ivy spoke next. Her words were calm, precise. "I did the math. The chances of finding someone who loves kids they didn't know, with nothing to gain, are almost zero. That means Mama Lydia is 1 in a million." The courtroom rippled with quiet murmurs. Finally, Noah stood. He didn't use notes. He didn't need to. When we lived on the streets, nobody looked at us. Nobody cared if we lived or died. Then she showed up. She didn't have to, but she did. And she stayed. That's more than anyone else ever did. His voice wavered. "These people say they want what's best for us, but they didn't want us when we were sleeping under bridges. Mama Lydia did. She still does. And that's the only thing that matters." Judge Rhodes watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. When he sat down, the silence was thick enough to choke on. The last witness changed everything. Arthur Pembroke took the stand, briefcase in hand. "Your Honor," he began, "I have served as executor of the Vale estate for over 20 years. I have reviewed the conditions of the trust personally. The will specifies that the inheritance be held by Ruth Vale's descendants only if they are raised by someone who would love them without knowing of their wealth." He opened his folder and placed a stack of photographs on the table. Images of Lydia and the children, studying together at the diner, celebrating birthdays, laughing in their cramped apartment. These were taken over several months as part of our standard verification process. Ms. Monroe had no knowledge of the inheritance during this time, yet she raised them with unwavering devotion. Arthur looked at the judge. "Your Honor, if love is the condition, then Ms. Monroe has already fulfilled every requirement of the will, and then some." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Lydia sat frozen, tears blurring her vision. Judge Rhodes banged her gavel. "Order." She took a long moment before speaking again. "This court has heard arguments about wealth, education, and opportunity, but none outweigh the evidence of genuine love and stability. These children are thriving under Ms. Monroe's care." The air hung heavy. Then came the words that changed everything. "Permanent guardianship is hereby granted to Lydia Monroe, with adoption proceedings to begin immediately." Gasps filled the room. Lydia covered her mouth, trembling. The children rushed forward, Noah first, then Ivy, then Finn, throwing their arms around her. The gavel struck again, but no one heard it over their laughter and tears. Outside, the rain had stopped. The cameras waited, but for once, Lydia didn't care. She looked at her family and whispered, "We did it." And for the first time in a long, long time, she truly believed it. 6 months after the custody hearing, the Vale Foundation opened its doors in a restored Victorian mansion on Maple Street. The brass plaque beside the entrance read simply, "Where families find each other." The building wasn't just a headquarters, it was a home. Its wide halls echoed with laughter and footsteps, with the low hum of coffee machines and the shuffling of papers. Lydia had wanted it that way. No polished boardrooms, no sterile offices, just warmth, connection, hope. That morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting the wooden floors in gold. Lydia moved through the rooms, checking on last-minute preparations for their first community event. A family festival, not a charity gala. She'd refused to host another stiff, glittering banquet for donors. "If we're building something real," she'd said, It should feel like family, not formality. Noah was already outside setting up tables with volunteers. At 15, he'd shot up in height, his once guarded expression replaced by quiet confidence. He directed a group of teens with practiced ease. "Careful with the banner," he called. "We want it straight, not perfect." Across the lawn, Ivy sat with a laptop on her knees, inputting data from their mentorship program. Numbers danced across the screen as she compared attendance rates, outcomes, and success metrics. "If we increase volunteer retention by 12%, she muttered, "we can reach 47 more families a year." Her voice had the calm precision of someone who turned equations into empathy. And Finn, now 10, always the heart of the trio, sat under the old oak tree, reading to a circle of children from the shelter. His voice carried softly through the air. "Families," he read, "can look all kinds of ways. What matters most is that people take care of each other." The children listened with wide eyes, some clutching donated teddy bears, others just happy to be seen. Lydia watched them from the porch steps, her chest tight with pride. For the first time in years, the world felt right side up. Inside, James Cooper, the shelter director, who had become both her professional partner and something more personal, looked over event schedules. His voice carried the calm steadiness that Lydia had come to rely on. "We're expecting over 200 families today," he said. "Teachers, social workers, foster parents, even a few legislators." Lydia laughed softly. "Politicians at a picnic. Now I've seen everything." James smiled. "You've made them believe in something again. That's not easy." Their eyes met for a long moment before she looked away, cheeks warming. "I didn't do it alone." "No," he agreed, "but you made it possible." By noon, the festival was in full swing. Music floated through the garden, carried by a small student band. Food trucks lined the street, serving barbecue, tacos, and homemade lemonade. Kids played tag between tables, while parents chatted in easy laughter. It looked nothing like the world Lydia had once known. The world of quiet pain, of surviving one day at a time. This was life blooming again. Near the entrance, a woman approached Lydia. Her hair was streaked with gray, her hands calloused. "You don't know me," she said, voice trembling, "but you helped me. My daughter was going to lose her kids because we couldn't pay rent. Your emergency fund kept our home. Thank you." Lydia blinked back tears. "You don't owe me thanks," she said softly. "Just pay it forward." The woman smiled. "Already did. I'm volunteering at the shelter now." Moments like that reminded Lydia why she'd started this, to make sure no other family had to break apart because of circumstance. In the afternoon, Judge Eleanor Rhodes, the same woman who'd granted her custody, took the small stage under the oak tree. The crowd quieted. 2 years ago, the judge said, her voice rich and steady, I presided over a case that challenged what I believed about family. I watched 3 children and 1 woman choose each other without obligation, without expectation, and without guarantee. That choice changed everything. Not just for them, but for hundreds of others since. She turned toward Lydia. The Veil Foundation has proven something our system often forgets. Families aren't built by bloodlines or wealth. They're built by love, persistence, and second chances. Applause rippled through the crowd. Lydia felt a lump rise in her throat. She met Noah's eyes across the lawn. He gave her a proud smile, one that said, "We did it." As twilight settled, lanterns lit the garden. The last of the children danced barefoot on the grass while the band played a slow, easy tune. Lydia stood beside James, watching her family move through the crowd. Their laughter, their energy, their light. Noah spoke with a group of high school volunteers about mentorship programs. Ivy explained her data charts to a social worker from another city. Finn sat with a small girl named Hope, helping her draw a picture of the mansion surrounded by smiling stick figures. "Look, Miss Lydia," Hope said, holding it up proudly. "That's our family. It's big now." Lydia knelt beside her, brushing a curl from her cheek. "It sure is, sweetheart." James placed a hand on Lydia's shoulder. "You realize what you've built here, don't you?" She exhaled slowly, eyes glistening. "Not what I've built, what we built. All of us, out of scraps and second chances." The night air carried laughter and music, a living reminder of everything they'd endured and everything they'd become. She looked toward the mansion's glowing windows and whispered the words that had once felt impossible. "We're home." And for the first time, home wasn't just a place. It was a promise that would keep growing, like the seeds of tomorrow, planted in love and watered by hope. 3 years later, the city looked different. Or maybe it was Lydia who had changed. The skyline, once a distant horizon, she stared at from a cheap motel window, now glittered with possibility. On a crisp autumn morning, she stood before the Vale Foundation's new community center, a 3-story building buzzing with life. Volunteers set up for the weekend's mentorship workshop. The smell of fresh paint still lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of roasted coffee from the corner cafe. The sign above the entrance read, "Vale Center for Family Resilience." The name had been Noah's idea. "Because that's what we're really about," he'd said, turning surviving into thriving. Lydia had cried when the board approved it. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with energy. Posters of smiling families decorated the walls, alongside quotes about second chances and courage. In the main hall, Ivy was explaining a new data tracking system to a group of social workers. Her voice was confident, her once anxious demeanor now replaced by purpose. "We've reduced reseparation cases by 20% this quarter," she said, pointing to a screen filled with colorful graphs. "It proves what we've always believed. Early support saves families." Across the room, Finn sat cross-legged with a group of children in the storytelling circle, just like he had under the oak tree years ago. His voice carried warmth and rhythm as he read from his favorite book, The Invisible Thread. "Sometimes," he told them, "the family you find is the one that saves you." The kids leaned in close, some clutching their drawings, others just listening with wide, hopeful eyes. Lydia paused in the doorway, watching him. That little boy, who once hid behind dumpsters, now helped other children see themselves as more than statistics. He was the heart of everything she'd built. Upstairs, Noah was in a meeting with the city council. His posture radiated confidence beyond his years, his tie slightly crooked, a touch of humility beneath all the poise. "If we fund youth mentorship programs instead of more detention centers," he said, "we don't just save money, we save futures." The council members listened, impressed by his clarity and conviction. Lydia smiled quietly from the back of the room. He didn't need her to speak for him anymore. When the meeting ended, Noah caught sight of her. "Eavesdropping again, huh?" "Just admiring," she said, her smile proud. "You sounded incredible." He shrugged, trying to hide his grin. Guess I had a good teacher. They shared a look, a silent acknowledgement of everything they'd survived. Then Noah's phone buzzed. "That's the senator's office," he said. "They want to talk about expanding the sibling preservation bill statewide." "Go," Lydia said. "Change the world." He kissed her cheek before heading down the hall. The same boy who once fought to protect his siblings in the rain was now protecting families across the state. Later that evening, the foundation hosted a small celebration for its volunteers. String lights draped across the courtyard, laughter mingled with music, and a light breeze carried the scent of apple pie from the dessert table. Lydia stood by the railing, her gaze drifting to the sky, glowing violet and gold. James appeared beside her, 2 mugs of cider in hand. "You know," he said, handing her one. "You've created something that doesn't just fix problems, it prevents them." Lydia smiled softly. "We created it. You kept me sane through it all." James chuckled. "You've been the heart. I'm just the guy making sure the lights stay on." They stood in companionable silence, watching the crowd. The children she once rescued from the rain were now leaders, mentors, visionaries. Ivy was talking with a professor about integrating her algorithms into public policy. Finn had gathered kids around a campfire, singing softly. Noah was laughing with other youth advocates, his voice filled with the calm certainty of someone who'd found his purpose. James looked at her. "You ever think about how far you've come?" "Every day," Lydia said, "but not in the way people think. It's not about money or buildings. It's about mornings where nobody's afraid anymore. About nights when the only sound is laughter. That's how I measure distance now." As the evening wound down, Lydia wandered through the building one last time. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet hallways. Photos lined the walls, snapshots of moments that had shaped them. The night they first moved into the old apartment, the courtroom victory, the first community festival, the foundation's groundbreaking. She stopped at one photo in particular. It showed her and the kids on that rainy night years ago, the first time they'd met, 4 souls in the shadows, clinging to survival. Beneath it, someone had written in neat handwriting, "From survival to purpose." Lydia traced the words with her fingers, eyes glistening. She whispered to herself, "We made it." Outside, the courtyard lights flickered softly. Ivy's laughter rang through the night. Noah strummed a guitar beside the fire, while Finn leaned against his shoulder, singing off-key. James joined her at the door, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Ready to go home?" he asked. She looked out at her family, no longer broken, just beautifully imperfect. "This is home," she said, her voice steady. "And everything we build from here, that's the future." The stars blinked overhead, quiet witnesses to a promise fulfilled. The woman who had once been abandoned now stood surrounded by love so vast it overflowed into the world. Lydia Monroe had turned her pain into purpose. And in doing so, she'd planted seeds that would keep growing long after she was gone. Proof that even in the darkest storms, love can light the way home. Night had fallen over the city, but the Vale Foundation still glowed like a beacon, a warm, steady light against the endless dark. From the rooftop garden, Lydia stood beneath a blanket of stars, the hum of traffic below a distant whisper. The wind carried the faint laughter of children from the courtyard, a sound she would never grow tired of hearing. It was the same sound that had once pulled her out of despair, the proof that love, when nurtured, could outlast anything. It had been 10 years since that night behind the diner. 10 years since she'd met 3 hungry faces in the rain and decided to care, even when she had nothing left to give. Now, that single act of courage had grown into something far beyond her imagination. The foundation had expanded to 5 cities. Thousands of families had been reunited, housed, fed, and protected. The programs had evolved: education scholarships, therapy networks, emergency childcare. But the heart of it all remained the same: a belief that no child should ever feel unwanted, and no parent should ever have to choose between love and survival. But for Lydia, it wasn't the buildings or the accolades that mattered. It was the small, quiet victories: the hand of a child reaching for hers, the look of a mother realizing she wasn't alone, the letters that arrived every week from families whose lives had been changed by the work she'd started. In her office, the walls were covered with photographs, memories turned into milestones. One caught her eye: Noah in a college graduation cap, Ivy presenting her first policy paper to the state assembly, Finn teaching children how to draw during a summer camp. The picture that hung in the center, though, was from their very first day in the mansion. The 4 of them standing in the sunlight, awkward and smiling, their future still uncertain. She smiled, tracing the edges of the frame. The woman in the photo looked tired, unsure, fragile. She barely recognized her now, because somewhere along the way, the woman who'd once been abandoned had become something else entirely: whole, strong, unbreakable. The door opened softly behind her. James stepped in, his face illuminated by the city lights. "You're still here," he said gently. Lydia nodded. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." He crossed the room, setting 2 mugs of tea on her desk. "End-of-year reflections again?" She chuckled. "Something like that. I keep thinking about how this all started, how fragile it felt, and how close I came to walking away." James smiled faintly. "You didn't. That's what matters." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stopped that night? If I hadn't seen them?" He shook his head. "You would have found them anyway. Maybe not those exact 3, but someone. Because that's who you are. You don't pass by broken things. You fix them." His words lingered, quiet and steady, and she found herself smiling. "Maybe. But I think they fixed me first." Downstairs, the main hall was empty except for the night staff and a janitor humming softly as he mopped. Lydia walked slowly through the quiet corridors, her footsteps echoing against the marble. She paused at the wall of donor plaques, running her fingers over the engraving near the top, dedicated to all the families still waiting to be found. Outside, the courtyard lights shimmered across the reflecting pool. Lydia knelt beside it, watching her reflection ripple in the water. Time had marked her gently, silver threading through her hair, laugh lines tracing the corners of her mouth, but her eyes were the same, alive, clear, unwavering. Noah's voice broke the silence. "Hey, Mom, you're up late." She looked up to see him crossing the courtyard, hands in his pockets, tall and confident. "So are you," she teased. "Couldn't sleep either. Big day tomorrow." Lydia smiled. Tomorrow, Noah would take over as executive director of the foundation, a transition she'd been preparing for over a year. "You're ready," she said simply. He knelt beside her, the light catching his features. The boy she'd once found in the shadows, now a man ready to lead. You built all this? He said softly. No, Lydia corrected. We did, he smiled. Think we'll keep making you proud? Lydia looked toward the building, the glowing windows, the laughter still echoing faintly through the halls. You already have. They sat in silence for a while, the stars reflected in the water. Finally, Noah stood, brushing off his hands. You should get some rest, Mom. She nodded. In a minute. When he was gone, Lydia stayed there alone, the night pressing gently around her. She thought of the journey, the pain, the hunger, the rain-soaked nights, the courtroom battles, the laughter, the healing. She thought of the children who had become her life's purpose, of the strangers who had become family, of the darkness that had once felt endless, now filled with light. Her voice was a whisper against the wind. We made it, Ruth. You and I. Your grandchildren. All of us. She rose slowly, turning toward the building that bore their name, her family's legacy glowing in gold letters against the dark sky. As she walked back inside, the city lights shimmered like stars beneath her feet. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between her heartbeats, she could still hear their laughter, the sound of hope reborn. Because in the end, love hadn't just saved her. It had saved them all. And that was her forever story, the light that began in the dark and never went out. When the credits of life roll, most people think that's the end. But for Lydia Monroe, and for every broken soul who's ever dared to love again, the end was just the beginning. She found family not by blood, but by choice. She turned betrayal into belonging, pain into purpose, and strangers into a legacy. The millions they inherited didn't define them. Love did. And in the quiet after every storm, that love kept growing, spreading, healing. Because that's what real love does. It multiplies. It rebuilds what the world destroys. It finds you in the dark, holds your hand, and says, you are not done yet. The Veil Foundation stands as proof that compassion isn't weakness, it's power. That hope isn't naive, it's necessary. And that one act of courage, a woman kneeling in the rain, offering a hand to a hungry child, can echo across generations. As you leave this story, remember, wealth fades, fame disappears, but the people we lift along the way, that's what lasts. Maybe you've been the one left behind. Maybe you felt unseen, unheard, unwanted. But as Lydia proved, even the most shattered life can become a lantern for others. So tonight, before you scroll away, take a moment, reach out, forgive someone, help someone, or simply tell someone they matter, because that's how light spreads. One heart, one act, one choice at a time. This was more than a story. It was a reminder that love doesn't just survive the dark, it creates the dawn. And when it does, you realize the truth Lydia always knew. You don't have to be rich to change the world. You just have to care enough to begin.